Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. A quick warning before we begin. Our main story today touches on the topic of weight and health. So if that's something that might make you uncomfortable, you may want to skip the story. If not, then let's get started with today's main story. This post is from the subreddit Relationships and it's by user Sweet Tooth Wife. Me, 30 male, with my wife, 30 female of 2 years. Wife had a public freakout on a crowded train. So, for the past couple of years, I've felt like my wife has two sides to her. There's a joyful, confident, upbeat person, then there's an angry and hostile person. The first her is, of course, when we get along best. Even then, lately sometimes her happiness seems a little too forceful. Like she is trying to prove something. I don't know. I suspect she may be depressed. I'm writing this for advice on how to suggest this to her so she can feel better. What I'm about to write is going to make her look really bad, but it's become clear to me that most people don't act like this. Something's going on. What happened was, last night on the metro, we were sitting, but my wife doesn't quite fit in one seat on a train. She takes more like a seat and a half. The train was jam-packed at this time with lots of people standing. There were some people in front of us holding on to the bar above us. One of them said, annoyed, to another, "Ugh, she's taking up 2 seats." My wife overheard this and she flew into a complete rage. I'm not talking about telling them off for being rude. She started screaming at them and cursing. She kicked the legs of the guy who made the comment. She was yelling that they were disgusting, entitled, and hateful. She got so worked up that her face was red and she was sweating. Luckily, those people got off at the next stop, probably to get away from her. She stopped yelling, but then still kept ranting to me about it all the way home. All this got stares from everyone around us, which was extremely embarrassing. The problem is, this is not very uncommon for her. There have been multiple instances like this. A lot of times, there are over things people do that objectively aren't even offensive. She gets snappy at restaurant workers and people in customer service positions. She rolls her eyes and sighs a lot, tells them they're doing a poor job and makes demands they're unable to meet. She also sometimes pushes her way past people and sits on their belongings on the train. She complains about people as though they're not there to hear her. I'm forced to face the dismay that my wife has become one of those people who acts embarrassing in public and is totally oblivious to it. These are the ones you see on YouTube in public freakout videos. She has no awareness of herself or others and is oversensitive and overreacting. I've desperately reached deep within my soul trying to summon the spark I once felt for her, but I simply cannot muster an ounce of attraction to this. I also have reason to believe she's even worse when I'm not with her, judging by some smug stories she stole on social media. Everything mentioned above is what I've seen for myself. She will make posts sometimes along the theme of how someone did something in public that annoyed her and she did something back to put them in their place. She's very condescending in these stories. Arguments she gets into show up on my feed and I'll see her telling internet strangers, "Deal with it, sweetie," or "Die mad about it" if someone criticizes her. She looks very childish in these conversations. A recent example was apparently she thought a stranger was judging her for eating fast food, so she confronted the woman saying something like, "Maybe if you ate more, you wouldn't be a skeleton upset about the sight of someone enjoying a meal." She gave no explanation of how she knew this person was judging her, but the post got a dozen comments from online friends of her, all praising her. Ah yes, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Echoes. Sorry this is taking so long. This ties into the other side of her now. In these posts and other times around me and people we know, she also has the positive, confident personality I mentioned. She's incredibly sure of herself, thinks she can accomplish anything, and honestly sometimes borders on arrogance. She's accused people of being jealous of her. She talks about being comfortable with her body enough to wear what she wants, but puts down other women for their own bodies and clothing. Her self-described anthem is a song whose lyrics are about how she loves herself and other people who want to be her. Whenever I try to talk to her about where the angry moments come from, she denies anything is wrong. She says her life is great and she's happy with where she is, so why would she be upset? She says she doesn't let other people bring her down. Isn't it possible to do that without lashing out at them for no reason? I'm finding it increasingly hard to understand her. Not to mention, the rudeness in public puts me in a very awkward position. These people just going about their day don't deserve it. Her aggression shows a side of her that I find very unkind. How do I handle these mood swings, especially around others? What are some ways to delicately bring this up so she doesn't go on defense immediately, but will open up to me about whatever's causing it? And answering likely questions, we're together for 6 years, married for 2, no kids, and no, she hasn't always been like this. Well, OP, from what you tell us, it sounds like your wife is either depressed or has huge anger issues, or maybe both. Now, of course, I understand all of this. However, that doesn't give her the right to treat people the way she has been. I'd say it's hypocritical at best, because, she can't stand somebody saying something rude about her, because of course not, who does? But then she gets to do that to other people? No, that's not right. That's called entitlement. And now we get to the difficult part, which is how do you raise this point with her, considering she's so deep in the echo chamber that she's just gonna deny anything you say. She's a happy person. How could she be an angry one? And for that, I'd think you'd have to enlist the help of a friend or family members who are also concerned as you and that are not part of her echo chamber that can help her snap out of it. Also, maybe you'd want to write down to keep in the log some situations where she's acted this way that it can only be explained because of her anger, that there isn't no other justification. So maybe confront it with that. She'll have to see the reality of it. And if she still refuses everything, she denies everything, and she doesn't want any help with anything because she doesn't have a problem, then you need to start asking yourself other hard questions, OP. Because the truth is that you cannot help somebody who doesn't think they have a problem and who doesn't want help. And what do you guys think about OP's situation? How would you try to deal with this? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's move on to the community comments to see what they said. RBF Queen says, sounds like deep down she is insecure about her weight. Seriously, if you're going to skinny shame people, don't be upset when they fat shame you in return. Like others are saying, therapy or bust. And OP responds, from what I've seen when I'm with her, no one fat shames her. She has a tendency to assume people are judging her, and then this usually leads to her starting a conflict. Dalai Drama Lama says, she sounds like awful company and she needs therapy. Physically assaulting people in public is a serious step too far. You can be annoyed about the comments just as people are annoyed they can't sit down, but hitting someone is dangerous. She could get hit in one go, lights out, and it would be justified. Do you want your wife to put herself in such positions or hurt others? Telling stories online about how you owned people is only going to give her momentary pleasure. Does she have real friends she meets up with? Is she sociable? And OP responds, quote, does she have real friends she meets up with? Is she sociable? End quote. She's alienated most of her real-life friends, not only because of her attitude, but because she began preferring to stay in whenever they invited her places. For the past year, she's mostly socialized online. She says her internet friends support and understand her. Obiter Dicta says, your wife needs to see a psychologist and a therapist and start dealing with her anger. And please do not have children with her. This crap is super toxic and terrifying for children to be around. Additional information from OP's comments. Yes, my wife has an unhealthy relationship with food that has gotten worse over time. At first, it used to be just binge eating desserts, but now it's junk food and fast food all around. But I can't say even a word suggesting she eats something better or eat less of the bad stuff because she will get angry or accuse me of shaming her. I try as hard as I can to be tactful. She still either takes offense or doesn't take me seriously. It's so mentally exhausting always to be trying to keep her calm and not offended. Add on hearing all the crappy things she believes I'm doing to her. I don't know how to get her to stop thinking this way. She doesn't always explode, but I can never consistently tell when she will. So I always have to be on guard against it, or else it's who knows how long of social embarrassment or deal with her yelling and sobbing in close quarters at home. These episodes can last several hours. I honestly don't know what I get from this relationship anymore. I'm not happy. It's taken me a while to admit that to myself, and then even longer to try to do something about it. If I met her now, with how she behaves today, I would not pursue her or try to establish a relationship with her. Of course, I still believe that person is still in there somewhere, because I know she's capable of being the person I once fell in love with. That's why I'm here asking for advice. Can I be brutally honest? I have no one to talk to about this, least of all her, and since this is anonymous, I may as well. This is what I hope from her. No more aggression and lashing out at random people, and treat server workers and other employees with respect. The yelling, sniping, shoving, and rudeness in public needs to stop, and I also want her to get out of the toxic online group she's in. They put people down a lot while talking themselves up. And I would like to have actual conversations, not fights. As I've already responded to someone else, she almost only has online friends. But the weird thing is, she used to be emotionally normal for her age and had lots of real-world friends. Now, it's like she's regressed. I think she simply cannot appropriately handle criticism, even if it's given calmly without anger. It makes sense that the tough, arrogant attitude is just part and parcel of the insecurity. Well, the community agrees that OP's wife is not acting properly, and OP left out all of the abuse that apparently he suffers under her, because if he has to walk on eggshells because he might say something to offend her and he just doesn't know what it is, well, that's just no way to live. Anyways, it's time for us to move on to the update to see what happened next and how the story ends. But before that, if you're enjoying this video or not enjoying the video, then let me know with the like or dislike button right underneath it. Now, let's move on to that update. Thanks to everyone who commented with insights and suggestions when I posted last month. You helped me understand what's going on in my wife's head a lot more. Since then, I've tried to address this seriously, using the advice you all gave me. Unfortunately, I don't have a very happy update. She flat out refused to hear me out, and I only tried to talk about her rudeness to other people. I didn't even touch on all the rest, how she acts in arguments with me, her unhealthy eating, internet drama, and mental health concerns. She accused me of caring about everyone except her. She thought I must be cheating with some ugly anorexic bee. I was exhausted, completely at a loss, and so frustrated that I admit I started crying. I must have had something of a mental breakdown after that. I left her screaming in the house, went out and drove around at random for a few hours. Came back at 2 a.m. She'd passed out snoring on the living room couch, melted tub of ice cream next to her, and the wrapper from my sandwich that I would have brought for my lunch the next day. At that moment, I had this sense of, how is this my life, washing over me? Something replaced the person I loved and married. I didn't know who this person was. Soon after that, her sister had a birthday party for her baby niece, who turned 1. Her sister also has a 5-year-old son, and her brother has an 11-year-old son and a 9-year-old daughter. They were all there too, plus my wife's parents. I went to this because I'd decided to file for divorce soon, and this might be my last chance to see her family, who I really love, especially my nieces and nephews. Her behavior there was nasty. Not only the usual overeating of the food provided, but at one point she took the last cupcakes when my nephew hadn't gotten to have one. He asked her for one, and she said no. I told her to give him one, and he said, "Yeah, Aunt OP, you don't need any more." And my wife lost her crap. She got up close over him and cursed him out. Remember, he's 11, and this was in front of even younger kids, then yelled at me for trying to control her and making her look bad. Nah, she did that by herself. I could not tolerate this. Standing up for myself and others is something I'm trying to work on. And I said she made herself look bad and I wouldn't argue in front of family. She stormed out and got an Uber home. I stayed the rest of the time, where I confided to the other adults that I was planning to divorce her over these incidents. They've seen the same bullying behavior I do. She wants to, quite literally, intimidate people to the point that children in our family are acceptable targets. Anyone and everyone is an acceptable target, so they supported my decision. They haven't known how to handle her recently either. They try to ignore it to not feed into the arguments she starts. Anyway, the one good bit of news is that they still want to keep in touch and want me to keep being an uncle to their kids, so that's a small comfort. Since then, I've been pretty much shut down. That was 2 or 3 weeks ago. This past week, I started divorce proceedings. I'm done. I simply can't deal with her. Her attitude gets more hysterical by the day. I do everything in my power not to go out in public with her in case she has a meltdown. I have to censor myself to avoid setting her off, and her unhealthy habits just keep getting worse. I don't know if it's denial or if she truly can't see the damage that she's inflicting on herself. I'm so sick of the junk food and garbage in the house. I weighed myself and found I've gained 15 pounds from falling into the trap of eating whatever's around rather than making an effort to cook. Anyway, I'm exhausted from not sleeping much. She's reacted as you'd expect to the divorce. Nothing but anger and wild swinging between how horrible I am to her and how she'll do anything to save our marriage. And she doesn't understand why I want to divorce. Also, whoever warned me on my last post that she'd blast me on social media, you were right. Her online echo chamber rallied around her, of course. I can't understand how she still doesn't realize the problems she's caused. It's absolutely unbelievable. If she wants to wallow in indulgence and spite to get attention from crazy people on the internet, there's nothing I can do except not be here for it. That would seem to be the lesson to learn here. A big part of me still thinks if I'd done something different, she might have listened and sought out help. That was all I asked for. Just go to a therapist and talk about how you react to people. That's pretty much it. I'm staying with a friend for now and scoping out apartments. It looks like I'll be back to roommate living. I'm telling myself that I'll soon feel relieved not to have to manage her instead of just feeling defeated. I hope that turns out to be true. Well, OP, unfortunately, she didn't leave you much of a choice. You tried talking to her about the, I would say, least triggerable offense to her, and she still wouldn't have it. She wouldn't have any of it, and she went off on a kid like that. No, she's got issues she's not seeing. And I absolutely agree with your decision. Hopefully, someday she'll get it and she'll seek some help to work through her anger. And as for you, well, here's wishing you the best in the future, OP. Thank you so much for sharing and take care. And now let's finish this video with a mood booster post. This post is from the subreddit Malicious Compliance and it's by user OopsPoopsDoops6566. Required to work 40 hours a week? Years ago, I worked for a company that tried to skate by with as little labor overhead as possible. They'd hire underqualified people and then expect top results. Management was a husband and a wife who ran the company like it was a Fortune 500 company. We maybe had 30 to 40 employees. They'd implement all sorts of policy. Most of them were arbitrary and very micromanaging. One of the policies they created was a mandatory 40 hours policy. If you missed any work Monday to Friday, you'd have to come in on Saturday to make it up. No excuses accepted. If you didn't come in on Saturday to make up the time, you'd get a strike. 3 strikes and you're gone. One day, I needed to take off from work half an hour early and I cleared it with my on-site boss. On Friday, one of the owners called me and said she double-checked to make sure I'll be there on Saturday. I explained it was only a half an hour I missed and she said there were no excuses accepted. I needed to work my 40 hours, otherwise I'd get a strike. Cue my malicious compliance. I told her, okay, and I'd be there on Saturday. I get to the site on time for the 7 a.m. roll call. The on-site boss takes the roll and starts telling people what projects they are going to work on. There are about 15 people on site, and I deliberately stand in the back waiting. By the time the boss makes it to me, it's about 7:25 and he starts detailing my job, and I cut him off and explained that I'd be leaving in 5 minutes. He looks at me and asks why. I explained to him that I was told I needed to work my 40 hours and that since I missed half an hour of work, I only needed to make up half an hour and would be leaving at 7:30 a.m. He asks why I can't stay all day and get the overtime, and I replied that I was only required to work 40 hours and that I had plans. I left promptly at 7:30 a.m. and had a great weekend. Come Monday, I got a "very disappointed that you chose not to stay to help your coworker" speech from the bosses, and that was about it. That policy went away a few weeks later. Well, you were told 40 hours, and you did 40 hours, OP. That's all that matters. Thank you so much for sharing. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out. So here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later. And also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.